Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, the great Rob Lee. Shower me your adulation. Today, I have the privilege of being in conversation with a designer, illustrator, and author working outside of Washington, D.C. He's had the pleasure of designing and illustrating for a wide variety of entertainment, corporate, and nonprofit clients. Please welcome Jeffrey Everett. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Wonderful to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you as well. We just started talking.
Oh, yeah. That other half an hour of really entertaining stuff is that never happened. That was all the best stuff right there.
That was for us, though. That was for us.
Okay. All right.
So, as we kind of get started here, again, thank you for coming on. I want to, peel the onion back a little bit, and I want you to share the Jeffrey Everett story. Ultimately, how'd you get here? Where's the story begin? How long have you been in the industry? Let's start off there.
So when you're saying peel the onion back, you want to see a grown man cry. Okay.
You get it.
Wow. So I am 46 years old. I have been running a version of my own company called Rockets Are Red for the last 20 years. I got my MFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York, and I'm a trained designer. I like working with clients. I like working with a purpose. I have that wonderful nagging doubt that I am not interesting. And so nobody wants to see my deep personal thoughts displayed on canvas. So I love working with bands. I love working with clients. So when I was taking this screen printing class at 8:00 in the morning on a Saturday in New York with art students, it was like me and the teacher, and that was it. And the teacher would go into the corner and basically fall asleep, and he would say, just print something and then I'll tell you how you're doing it wrong. And so I just started reaching out to bands and doing screen printed posters for them. Yeah. And then when I moved back to DC, I got a wonderful job that fired me 4 months later, the day before my wedding. That was fun.
No.
Oh, yeah. And so I just said at that point, screw it. I'm going to just do this full time and see if I can make a run at it. Now, in that 20 years, I've worked at other design firms. Currently, I'm a senior designer at the National Institutes of Health. And so I can tell you about dealing with QAnon people versus dealing with punkers. Which one's worse? It's the QAnon people. But yeah, so I mean, I've had a really varied career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get it. What else do you want to know?
No. So I got 2 more bullet points in there. I got a whole lot of questions. I got a whole slew of questions. You're very interesting, and also good on you, sir. I did not get 46. I did not get 46.
Oh, really? Do I look older or younger?
Younger.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I don't. How do I look? How old do I look?
See, that's a trick question now.
Yeah, black don't crack. I know.
I'm gonna go with you look like a distinguished, sophisticated 35.
I'm 37.
All right. See?
Yeah, it worked.
I did pretty well.
Yeah, thank you.
You have that swagger to you. You have that confidence that the 30s come with. When you hit the 40s, you have that, internal despair and what the fuck am I doing with my life? I'm literally arguing with Mike Ness from Social Distortion about the type of tow truck we're using in a poster, and you're just I can't what the fuck, dude? What the fuck? No one cares. It's a fucking tow truck.
So with that, that's it's funny. So you mentioned working with punk bands and working with National
Institutes of Health.
So NIH.
So all that stuff about COVID,
yeah.
I probably touched it.
Well, my day job is in a public health place, so
okay.
we may talk a little bit.
Yeah, you probably hate me on some level. You just don't know it yet. So like every place I go, like, so I love to travel. So like when
Sure.
I was at Seattle,
Mhm.
and I went into a bathroom and there was like a poster I did about like COVID and like, wash your hands, basically like don't be a dick stuff.
Yeah.
And like on it was like, fuck this, like exclamation. And my kids walked into the bathroom and looked at that and they were like, "You designed that, Dad, right?" I was like, "Yep, sure did,
With the F
sure
bomb and
did."
everything.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So tell me about some of the influences, the inspirations that kind of work themselves into your work, your aesthetic, or what have you. Like, what sort of like art and design when you were like coming up and going into this sort of industry, well, going into this industry really like resonated with you? Like, for instance, I really like pop art. So
mhm.
if I ask someone to design something like my business cards I have, it definitely has this local art and it has this
Oh
sort of
shit, you froze.
it has that local, has this art, has
You
this local
froze.
artist, and it has this sort of like pop art sensibility attached to it. So for you, like what did you grow up looking at? What did you grow up that really like resonated with you that maybe finds itself into your eye, your aesthetic?
So, I grew up in like a very small town. I grew up in the town where Mary Had a Little Lamb was written.
Really?
And yeah, and like legitimately, I had no neighbors. It was like farm country. And so there was a biker bar next door, and they had feral chickens that would attack my dog. And that was about the closest to neighbors I had. So I would bike about 10 miles to we only had one convenience store, and I would bike there. And it was so low rent, they didn't have X-Men comics or Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah.
They only had classic X-Men, which even then, those were like a year behind, like everywhere else. So, my dad would give me a few bucks every day during the summer. I'd mow the 3 acres of lawn, bike down there, get a sandwich, buy a comic book.
Mhm.
So comic books were like the thing that really got me into art.
Sure.
That and so my parents were Baptists. So we had like illustrated Bibles. And so of course, Revelations was like the coolest thing ever. And all of it was, thick lines, flat color because it's easy to print like that. And that totally inspired all of me, like everything that I still do to this day. I used to read John Belair books,
Mhm.
and Edward Gorey would do all the illustrations. And so, oh, I can do that. Like I have pens and I would do like pen and ink work.
Yeah.
Well, I would do like 18 by 24 pen and ink pieces. And to this day, I have like terrible tendonitis. You can't see it. I'm wearing like a huge arm elbow brace right now because I blew out my wrist. I blew out my elbow
Oh no.
because no one told me that when he did those, he was doing up like 4 by 6 size
Yeah.
instead of like doing 18 by 24. So I like completely ruined my wrist doing all that. But like that was what I had when I was really young. It was like the Sunday comics,
Mhm.
comic books, the Bible, and then like, whatever else I could scrounge up. But when I got older and would start driving into Boston, I would go on Newbury Street where all the punks were, and you'd be like, oh, like photocopy machines. You can just photocopy stuff, and that's cool. You can rip up, textbooks and use that. It was like this huge kind of swell of like DIY culture,
Yeah.
and just kind of like you can do crappy cartoons. You can take old paintings and mess them up. You can do collages. You don't need to have fancy typefaces. You can do it yourself. You can do ransom note style. And that for me was like, oh, I'm kind of shitty as an artist, but I can at least do this.
Right.
Which is kind of how it gets me through now, where I'm like, yeah, I kind of suck, but I can at least fake it.
So tell me about how you kind of develop and pick up like skills to add to your the way that you go about your work. Like obviously you're not a crappy artist. You have to be, you're doing good work or what have you. And like I dig your work. Like I've been on there. I was exploring through the page. Yeah, I do some internet stalking, I'll put it. And but tell me about some of the skills that you pick up, well, off of your sort of like foundation. Because I'll say like when I'm doing this, I'm self-taught. I've been doing this for like 14 years. And it's like I can use multiple different ways to get sound, whether it's through having a small little pocket recorder and doing some manipulation through editing, or I can use any of the really nice expensive software or even the freeware. And those are just different skills that I'm picking up and layering off of this sort of like idea of I can get sound with this and I can do something with it. So based on like your foundation in art, design, illustration, like what skills do you try to like add to it like as you go along? Like what's something that you've learned recently?
Recently I've been learning how to use like halftone swatches.
Okay.
Learning how to use like pre-made brushes and downloading them and really being able to like layer color. Yeah. So like when I first started, my first poster I ever designed was black ink with a black varnish on top with no registration whatsoever. And I think I kind of peaked at that first one. I really nailed it. It was like two of my favorite bands of all time did a decent poster. I should have just stopped, gone out on 1,000. But like for years, it was just how much space could I take up using just flat color, because I didn't know how to layer colors. I didn't know how to mix them well so I could get more of a rainbow. And so now it's like I'm doing a lot of like halftoning. I'm doing a lot of blends and things like that. And I still think it relates to my earlier work, but it's just kind of another little trick that I have. But honestly, like you were saying, I think most of this stuff just comes by repetition. And then after a while you go, oh yeah, this is how I do things now.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I was talking to somebody, I'm putting out a book right now, and there's like, it's only concert posters, and there's like at least 350 posters in there.
Wow.
And the person was like, oh, well, what's the process like? And I'm like, the posters I did on day one aren't that much different than the posters I'm doing now. The technique is different, but the spirit is still there. But I do think, like, I'm not a trained illustrator. Like, I'm a trained designer. And I think probably in the last 10 years, I've really started to go from using clip art to drawing my own pieces. And with that, developing this idea of like doing the poster should be a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things I've really picked up is more concepting, talking about the work, and really doing like individualized work for bands.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does.
Okay.
So tell me about the cadence, like, because, I'm a crazy person. I'm recording 3 to 4 interviews a day and living a dream. That's what I was describing earlier when we first started. I was like, busy, good, but busy.
Yeah.
And having that with the day job or what have you, we're not at that spot where it's like, man, I'm doing my own thing. So And because I want to be there though. So tell me about like your cadence. Like, how often are you working? Like, I really want to know some of those sort of like rituals. You know, I don't know if it's this book that was out there, this creatives, like what their rituals are. And I remember like the whole Andy Warhol thing. I'll get up and, I'll have a couple eggs and then I'm going to go here and then kind of mess around for a bit. I might actually start working at like 9 p.m. for like an hour. That's my work for the day. What does your kind of like cadence look like? What does a typical day look like for you when it comes to your work?
I am, excuse me, I still have that wonderful COVID cough.
Oh, no.
I am actually fairly rigid on what my day looks like. It has taken me about 20 years to figure out how I work best. So I get up early, like I'm up, 6 o'clock. Kids are taken care of and out the door. I am downstairs working usually by 6:30, 7:30 latest. I take medication for ADHD, which I've only started doing in the last year, and it's fucking amazing how much more work I can get done now. But legitimately, I do all of my work between 7 and noon to 2 o'clock every day.
Yeah.
That said, I'm thinking about work all the other times of the day.
Yep.
So when I work with clients, I say it'll take me about 2 weeks to get the concept. Once I get the concept, it'll take me about a week to do it. And sometimes the concept takes longer and longer and longer. So like I know how to work my machine. I know where all of my color libraries that I've developed over the years are, my library of textures, all of that. So I work really quickly now. But it's the coming up with like, what do I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to explain to people, like, you think about what you're saying about Andy Warhol. He may be walking around the city all day and reading newspapers and books and having milkshakes, but he's thinking about work the entire time.
100%.
And, I read this story once about, I believe it was like samurai calligraphers back like centuries ago.
Yeah.
And there was like a documentary film about them. And it was just the guy staring at the canvas and staring and staring and staring and staring for what seemed like hours. And then he just picks up the brush, does a few flicks of the wrist, and there's like this beautiful piece.
Right.
So if you look at the time expenditure to actually do it, it was 30 seconds. But it took 10 hours to figure out the 5 flips of the wrist to get it perfect. And I feel like that's how I am, or at least that's my bullshit excuse when my boss goes, "Why do you keep looking out the window?" Well, let me tell you about these samurai calligraphers. So.
But I dig that though. Like, one of the things that's like doing this sort of the conversation and having questions as a framework to try to like guide the storytelling piece here. I like to look at what I do as facilitating someone's story versus telling us. I'm not telling your story, you're telling your own story, but I'm facilitating it through this sort of lens. Right. And I find that, a lot of the things that go into me coming up with a question or coming up with a direction I want to take on it, it comes from me being exposed to different art books, being exposed to different audiobooks I'm listening to other podcasts, all of these different things that, and including the research that I'm doing as well on the guest. And it's like, there are multiple hours. I used to frame it this way. One of my buddies, and he's asking me, like, think about your work as a system. How many hours are you putting in to produce that finished podcast? And it's like, it might be, 2 to 3 hours, that I'm putting in or what have you. And I'm just thinking like purely in like research. And that's not like really looking at how can I refine it, but still the questions, because I want to be unique. I want to get one of the things that makes me feel really good when someone says, "That's a good question." It's like, you don't have an answer, do you? Or I've never been asked that before. And I'm just like, that's what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming to have that one that's like, no one's ever asked me that question. And I'm literally asking it not to do a gotcha sort of thing, but really to get underneath of. I really want to get into the nitty gritty as to why someone creates the way that they do, what goes into it. And it's because it's something interesting there that I think listeners and myself, obviously, having that curiosity, but I think listeners can get out of it as well. Like, damn, so this is how Jeffrey creates. This is how he's doing his work or what have you. And maybe it inspires, but also gives somebody a little juice,
Right.
juice to maybe take their approach in a certain way and
What
yell at people about tow trucks.
and what? Oh yeah. I tell so many stories I forget them. But like I can tell, like I've done podcasts where the person I'm speaking to clearly has never looked at my work before
Yeah.
and will kind of be like, yeah, oh, you did work for REI. Oh, you did work for this. And I'm just like, you've never looked at my work. Because like the REI thing is nice, but it's not representative of what I do. So you're literally on my website right now,
Like, oh,
clicking the illustration thing, and with that, you're on a website I haven't updated in like 3 years.
I noticed that, by the way. I was like, what is this?
Sorry. I'm
like
like trying to update it now, and I'm just like, do people use websites? Don't they just go to their social media these days? I'm old. Like, I don't go to people's websites anymore. The worst is when you go to someone's website and they have like the news or the blog, and that
Is the social media
clearly hasn't been updated for like a year and a half. And you're like, dude, just take it down. Just take it down.
It's like that. It's like that bit in like The Simpsons. It's like, trouble in Missouri. It's like, oh, we had this weird cough. It's like, what date is? Oh, 2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're working in a nice cross section, as we talked about. You've worked with folks in entertainment. We were talking about off mic about doing some work for wrestlers, and you've done work for musicians, corporate and nonprofit and things of the sort. How do they compare? Is a corporate client, for sake of argument, more in generalities, obviously, but is a corporate client more rigid than an entertainment client or a nonprofit client? Does one have a better eye, or is one more brand conscious? Make sure you get those colors right. Tell me about that.
I had a friend pull me into a job, and it was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Huge budget. They paid me like a stupid amount of money. But it was you have to use the brand colors.
Mm-hmm.
We need this in a week. And then they would keep adding stuff to the project. And I'd be like, yo, like, you need this in a week. Like, you're not understanding how much work this is or what you're asking of me. And at the end of the day, when you work with certain like larger companies, they really do miss all of the details.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't necessarily get the story or get the passion or get the feelings behind what you're trying to do. It's kind of like, all right, we've all seen American Psycho, and we all know the business card scene, right?
Yes.
And how everyone's like, ooh, oh,
bone.
Like the bone, and it's off-white vermilion, whatever. The thing that always made me laugh was that on every card, the word acquisition is spelled incorrectly. And that's how it feels when I work with a lot of like corporate clients. You really care about certain things,
mm-hmm.
but you don't always care about the most obvious things. So when I did this big project, my friend sent me pictures and he was like, isn't this really cool? And I was like, no, like it wasn't. Like, I'm really glad that I did this. The paycheck was great. It was fun working with my friend, but I was like, I'm never going to show this to anybody. Like, my name's not on it. I don't want people to see it. They spent a tremendous amount of money to have it be up for like 3 days, and then it disappeared. And I just was like, yeah, that works. That's cool. Whatever.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the check cashed. But then like I will work with bands, and I will work with some bands where it's like, cool, you're one of like 80 posters that we're doing on this tour.
Mm-hmm.
Just do whatever you want. We don't care. The band name will sell it, right? And that's discouraging. But then we'll do the post, like, they'll do like the online sale after the tour,
Mm-hmm.
and mine won't be a part of it. And I'll be like, yo, like, what happened? Why aren't my posters up? And they'll be like, oh, they sold out that night. And part of me, goes, yeah, because I didn't just throw a skull on top of an ice cream cone and that's supposed to represent emo music, or that's supposed to represent, how my heart got broken. Like, I really, will work hard for my clients in like what you're saying. Like, I will try to understand my client, not only what the band wants, but I think what's more frustrating, what do the fans want, and then trying to make those two things work, because they don't always work together. You're having to convince a manager and a merch manager and someone working the table, the lead singer, the bitter drummer, all of them, to why this will work. And everyone can go, yeah, skulls are cool, or, for the longest time it was, just throw a hot girl with tattoos on there, the poster will sell. And that definitely worked for a long time for me. But after a while, you're just like, how many times can I do this and then not just come off like a scumbag? So, I think for me, working with small bands are actually the toughest,
mm-hmm.
because for them, this is like the encapsulation of like a year of work for them.
Sure.
And the money that they're paying me, even if I give them a deal, is like a lot of money to them. And so I always do like I'm going to show you a rough sketch. It's basically going to be a stick figure. I'm going to do it. You get 2 rounds of edits, small edits, and then that's it. And it'll always be, well, we showed this to our 15 friends. Here's the edits they want you to make. Can we completely redesign it? Can we make the name bigger? Can we do this and this and this and this and this? And I always kind of go, you came to me for a reason. Just trust me.
Yeah.
But that never happens. I worked with one guy, and all it was a picture of a woman not naked. And I had to change the face 8 times.
Wow.
Because first it was she was too pretty, and then it was, not pretty enough, and then it was, even though we're using like a alternate color, does it look too ethnic? Does it not look ethnic enough? Should we put glasses on her? It looks too much like Hillary Clinton.
Oh, no.
So yeah, we did like 10. I did like 10 faces to get like the most generic, pretty but not too pretty.
Ethnic but not too ethnic.
Yeah, it's like, oh, come on. So yeah,
it just turns into American food,
Yeah, just put mayonnaise on everything. Just nice and bland. So yeah, did that answer your question?
No, it did. No,
I
it
get
did.
lost in my rambling.
No. That definitely helps. Gives us that sort of what does that experience look like in working with clients, and that's what I was looking for there. So what is like? So I got two more real questions for you, and before I hit those rapid fire ones with you.
Compared to fake questions?
Yes, fake
Okay.
questions. So the rapid fire ones are just goofy questions. So yeah. So what would you how would you define success, like, for you, like, is it, like kind of booking that huge client or what have you, a band that you're really into, or doing a project that you're like, the paycheck is a certain thing, or being very selective about who you decide to like work with, or, and with that, what has been a highlight for you in your career? Like, you touched on a few things I think before we started, but tell me about that. Like, is success defined for you, and what is a highlight of your career thus far?
Success for me is knowing that I still want to do what I want to do after 25 years of having other people tell me I suck. I still love to come down to my studio. I still love sending stuff out to print. I still love having people in Japan and Australia, in Germany, the UK, South America, Idaho and Ohio, and all those places buy my shit. That blows my mind that someone's willing to spend $45 plus $15 to ship it for a piece of paper with ink on it. Like, it blows my mind. That to me is success. I really feel like longevity in what I'm doing is like the pinnacle. Like, still doing something new and not riding off of the accomplishments of when I was young. Does that make sense?
It does.
Like, I don't have glory days. Like, I'm sure you're a huge Bruce Springsteen fan.
Yeah.
And so he has that song Glory Days.
Yeah.
And I could lecture on this for an hour and a half, but the if you listen to the song, he's always talking to other people and they're talking about their glory days. And Bruce will kind of like go, oh yeah, we talked about this and we talked about that. But he never says that he's in he has glory days. Why? Because he's Bruce fucking Springsteen.
Right.
And he's still riding that crest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the dude's going on tour doing sold out shows for ridiculous amounts of money and selling out arenas. So he's not looking back going, oh, wasn't it better way back then?
Yeah.
No, because he's still fucking doing it. And that's kind of how I feel. Like, I'm not playing arenas. I'm not in huge books. I'm doing wonderful podcasts such as this.
Cheers.
And that, makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I have yet to go, it was really cool when I did XYZ, because I'm really excited for my next gallery show. I'm excited to be doing a book tour. I'm excited that I'm putting out a book. I'm excited I already have another book planned after that. Now, granted, I also fully am aware I'm picking up $30,000 of my saved money and throwing it out the window, printing a book in Italy that like 3 people that I'm related to will probably buy. But, fuck it. How many people put out books?
This is true. This is true.
Yeah. Well, like, I had a friend, and she was going through a divorce, and she was like, hey, like, what are you doing today? And I was like, oh, I'm doing a podcast. I'm getting printer quotes for my book. I'm doing some work for Social Distortion. Like, we just did like a 4-poster series. I have a gallery. Like, I'm just kind of listening to all this shit. And she just goes, man, you make it sound so normal. And I was like, well, like, this is just my life.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, like, my husband never did any of that stuff, And, like, not many people go on podcasts. The fact that you have a podcast that, granted, I'm the low point in it, but
Absolutely
like,
not.
like fucking James Spooner was on it. He's so fucking rad. So like, people, I think of success as working for these really huge bands, and it's like, I have worked for really huge bands. They don't pay that much money.
Right.
You get to go, I worked with this band that did Wembley Stadium. I've done posters for bands that have sold out Wembley Stadium,
Right.
and they were dicks, and their manager made it so I had a nervous breakdown because they were so shitty. And then I've worked with bands that haven't sold out the club, and it's not a big club, and those are my favorite posters.
Yeah.
So
no, I dig it. There are instances in doing this when we peel back that curtain, about what it is to work with clients, or in my instance guests, and so on. And some of the things that I hear, I get weird things that feel like personal attacks that people have no problem sending to me in email. And if I wasn't who I am and believe like, well, that happened behind the scenes, I'm not going to put it out there, it could cause them some real issues. And people taking really weird personal attacks with no information really of like, if you have to reschedule for sake of argument, we're still in the midst of COVID, you know what I mean? And anything could happen. Well, I don't really do reschedules. It's like, okay, cool. Or asking for an obscene amount of money for an honorarium, to be on here. And it's like, I don't know if that's the case. Like going to your thing when you said James Spooner, I had him on and we just chopped it up, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. Versus someone who is more emergent and trying to develop and kind of, hey, if you want me to be on here, you got to pay me $400 for a 30-minute interview. And those are things that are there. And at the same time, I'll have friends, and, I've been pretty much riding this wave of interviews, for months at this point. And I'm still just like, I get satisfied in peaks, but really it's just like, this is normal, kind of what you were touching on. And I'll talk with my buddy, and it's like, man, I'm mid because I'm trying to move to whatever the next thing is, not move away from this, but actually do this in a richer way. And I almost feel like I should always hear yes. Yeah. And when I don't get that, because I know what work I'm putting in, I know the quality of the content and so on, and I know the guests that I say yes to when people reach out, I'm like, no, I'm picking good guests. I'm having good conversations with people. How can I get that trust to take this to that next spot? And, feeling fortunate enough that I'm in a spot where I can just, at least have the possibility of, I want to do a calendar. I want to do a book. I want to have, and this, you may find this interesting. At one point, this is kind of like the wrap, because I got the rapid fire questions after this, but, I remember I was talking with a guest, and I do these live podcasts. I want to do like the band poster, but from the locations that I want to, like, you had to have been there to get this poster, not being sold anywhere else, having that sort of exclusive experience sort of creation. And I remember when I was a little while back, I'd have an idea like that. Someone would tell me it was stupid. Now it's just like, no, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. I was like, I know, but like, these are the same types of ideas I'm having.
Right. Well, bring it back to wrestling. Paul Heyman said about ECW, you're going to put stuff out there and you'll either turn people on or you'll turn people off.
Yep.
And the idea is to turn more people on. I have been told that what I do is not legitimate design. That I have tried to go on some podcasts, like the big design podcasts, and been told straight up, you're not a real designer. And then I turn around and go, hey, motherfucker, how many people have your work tattooed on them? 0.
Yeah.
How many people have your work for Pepsi Cola framed it on their wall?
Right.
You know, how many people have taken your work into into a mosh pit, swung it around like a baseball bat, literally have blood on it, and then they get it framed, in like a really expensive frame. The problem with like social media and everything is that there's always comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
And, I went and saw a band play a sold out show at the Anthem a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I went and watched them. I'm not going to say who the band was, but it was like a reunion kind of show. And I remember sitting there in my VIP seats, and I remember looking at this band going, fuck, this is like meeting that girl that you had a crush on in high school 10 years later. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, why did I ever like this person? Like, she's not as cute. She's definitely not as smart. She's certainly not funny. What did I ever like about this person? And then like a week later, Girls Against Boys played The Black Cat. And I was pumped because I did posters for the show.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're my favorite band. Rockets Are Red are named after one of their songs. Yeah. Because when I was 20 years old, walking through DC with my girlfriend, who then became my wife, she goes, hey, do you ever want to open a design firm? And I said, yeah. What would you name it? And we were coming from a Girls Against Boys show. And I said, Rockets Are Red. So I saw Girls Against Boys play to, I don't know, 3/4 of the venue was full, and they fucking slayed. Eli, Janie, all of them are in their 50s, and they are jumping around stage, swinging the double basses, the guitar player's going off, the drummer's amazing, and I just was like, I haven't seen them play in years. And they destroyed that band I saw last week,
right?
Who are all maybe in their late 30s, early 40s, who didn't take a step on stage. But like Eli Janie is like ripping it up, So it's like, yeah, sometimes you don't have 100,000 followers on Instagram. But, I have friends who have 100,000 followers on Instagram who can't pay the rent. I have just over 9,000 followers, and I go, as long as 50 people are willing to buy a print, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. That's all I need.
That's literally the thing. It's like that,
yeah,
the 1,000 true fans thing, or whatever that number might be. And, getting people to buy in, that's really cultivating and curating an audience. And, those are the people that, actually the people that you're speaking to, and they're going to ride with you with whatever you're doing. And I think that's an indication of success. And also that's where we're going to stop at before we get to these rapid fire questions.
Because Jeff does not shut the fuck up, and he takes too long. This is a 30-minute podcast.
No, Jeff has been great. So now here, brevity is key here, though. All right. Here's the first question. What is something you wish someone told you when you first started out?
Never show the sketch that you're not 100% jazzed about doing, because that's the fucking sketch that the client will pick.
That's great. You mentioned traveling earlier. What is your favorite place you've traveled in the last, let's say, 5 years?
Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
They had vegan donuts on like every corner.
Yeah. And
they have really good music venues there.
Cue the FTR theme. Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you just what's in terms of a through line, what would be 3 words you would use to describe your style of art?
Oh God.
I know.
Fuck. You know me. I don't say anything briefly. I would say bold. I would say colorful, emotional.
Okay.
I don't fucking know.
No. Those are good.
My kids would say it sucks. So they would just be like, it sucks, exclamation point.
um, no, this one is see these last two. I think they're gonna catch you. If you could be one fictional character, who would it be?
One fictional character.
Yeah.
Oh, motherfucker. You should have sent these to me earlier.
I am a fictional character. That would be amazing.
You know what? I'm going to say Captain America.
Okay.
I either Captain America or Spider-Man. No, Captain America, because he's on that government money. So I'm gonna say him. I have a firm. I'm going to tell you why. So I worked with Fred Rogers.
Okay.
Mr. Rogers. And, Captain America is Steve Rogers. So, like, my religion is called the Two Rogers. And it works really well. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Captain America.
I'm here for it. So this is the last question I got for you. We talked about wrestling before and a little bit in the actual podcast. So I must ask, who's your favorite 90s wrestler?
Oh, okay. So I didn't get into wrestling until the 2000s.
Favorite 2000s wrestler?
It's going to be a two-parter because they were a tag team.
Okay.
Sabu and Rob Van Dam.
My man.
Because when I lived in New York and I would go to Kim's Mondo to get videos, and the guy was like, dude, you need to check out ECW. I got that tape and I saw them doing splashes through tables. And I went, what the fuck is this? And that renewed my love of wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it goes right back to it. I mean, ECW went out of business, but it still means so much to people. And I think that's the legacy that you want to have.
Yeah. Yeah. When I go up there to Philly, I've gone to see more the most wrestling shows that I've gone to see, and I've probably seen less than 10 wrestling shows in person. I've seen probably 4 in South Philly at the old ECW arena, and maybe 3. And all 3 of them were New Japan Pro Wrestling events, but in Cali when they've come here for Long Beach and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a part of it. And then seeing that is almost a lost era in some regards, where we're not getting that crazy. On occasion you get some GCW and they get into the blood and guts sorts of matches, or as they call it, garbage matches. But yeah, I mean, those Rob Van Dam and Sabu, absolutely 100%. And Rob needs to really cut his hair because it is thinning in the back. That shelf.
It's getting sad. I have long hair that I tie back, but I'm not bald.
Yeah.
And I don't have the weird, he does the shaved, but he doesn't go all the way up. He kind of does it's just.
It's what Shawn Michaels had going on.
I love Rob, but man, come on, get with the times. All right. Get with the times. Now, have you seen Sabu?
He's not looking great.
No.
It's not good.
He's one of those people where you're just what do you do next? You know what I mean? And it's what I know with punk bands. It's you are famous to a certain amount of people, but what do you do afterwards?
There are carnies.
There are, but okay. So I don't know if this is true or not, but I read how Tito Santana opened a hair salon when he retired.
Yeah.
And I really respect the hell out of that.
Yeah.
Of just I need to make money. I'm going to cut hair of old women,
Because this notion of going out there and saying, oh, I'm just going to sign autographs and toys and such. And it's you can do that, but what is your actual day job? I think Scott Steiner has a Zaxby's or something in Atlanta. And I think Rick Steiner was a politician or something. It's okay, you actually did a thing. Yeah.
Well, and who is it? Shane Douglas either worked at or still works at Target. Can you imagine going there and being hey, where's the stationery?
Stop.
can you show me the fluffiest sheets? Like it's weird, like when you meet people that you absolutely love
Uh-huh.
in like really pedestrian settings. And like that has happened to me. Like there's a band I love called Restorations. They're from Philly.
Mhm.
And I went to like get breakfast at this diner called The Tasty. And he was working there. And it was just one of those things of like, I don't know if I say anything. I feel really weird. Like, do I make it like, can I tell him to take the sour cream off? Like, I don't know what to do because this guy's amazing, you know?
So I want to wrap up here and thank you for being on the podcast. This has been a treat. It's been great to chat with you, and I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks, the listeners, where they can check you out, your work, your website, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
All right. So my main website is Rockets Are Red. So it's rockets-are-red.com. My book is coming out hopefully in January. We're doing the Kickstarter for that. And that's letitbleed.com. So it's let-it-bleed.com because I like to make everything as difficult as possible. All the good .coms have been bought. You can find me on Instagram at Rockets Are Red, no hyphen. And yeah, that's it. Shoot me emails, shoot me DMs, nothing that's going to make me say, put some clothing on. And yeah, that happens more than you think. I get a lot of like, could you put me on a poster? And I'm like, no. I want to talk to you about some stuff going on in your life. Why are you doing this to an old man?
Let's talk boundaries.
Yeah.
So with that, again, thank you for being on this podcast. And I want to say that for Jeffrey Everett, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there is art, culture, design, illustration in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for it.